Peace and blessings to the 12 tribes of Israel. Today I'm going to do a Bible share called The Curse of Ham. Now, if you spent quite a lot of time in church, what you would realize is that there is this kind of underlining theme whereby they say, like for instance, if you ask a question, why are black people always at the bottom? Why are we always ill-treated? Why are we always treated the worst? Why are we always poor? Why is Africa poor? Why is the Caribbean poor? Why are black people always at the lowest ends of society? We're always susceptible to go through the worst punishments. Why? And if you push your minister or your bishop or your apostle, your leader, if you push your leader, he would always say, oh, well, it's probably just the curse of Ham, Or some of them, they wouldn't even say the curse of Ham. They would just say, well, we're all one in Christ. It's just one of those mysteries, It's one of those mysteries of life. They don't really have a firm answer as to why these things are happening, and they don't have a firm answer when it comes to the curse of Ham, because a lot of people, to justify wickedness of other nations, to justify wickedness of the Gentile nations, what they would say is, oh, it's the curse of Ham. Ham was cursed. Ham was black and everybody else was white. And Ham was black and he was cursed. And some of them will say it bluntly. They would say it bluntly. They would say, well, Ham was black and he was cursed. And that's why you're cursed, because Ham was cursed. And that's it. But the Bible doesn't really talk that much about Ham. It talks about his children, in particular the Canaanites, but it doesn't really talk that much about Ham as himself, if you know what I mean. Okay? So, let's now delve into the Bible study or the Bible share, and we are going to do a study on the curse of Ham. Okay? So we're going to go to Genesis 9, and we are going to read from 18 to 29. Okay? So it's Genesis 9, and we're reading from 18 to 29. Okay? And the sons of Noah that went forth out of the ark were Shem and Ham and Japheth. And Ham is the father of Canaan. Okay? So there were three sons of Noah. So after the flood, or before the flood, there was only three sons, and Noah's three sons and their wives, and Noah and his wife entered the ark. Obviously with animals, right? Then after the flood dissipated, there was, well, obviously the people that went in the ark in the first place, they were the only people that were left, right? So there was the three sons of Noah produce the people that we see today. So they were Ham, Japheth, and Shem. Okay. 19. These are the three sons of Noah, and of them was the whole earth overspread, right? 20. And Noah began to be a husbandman, and he planted a vineyard, and drank of the wine, and was drunken, and he was uncovered within the tent, right? So Noah got drunk. 22. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father, and told his two brethren without, right? So he saw the nakedness of his father, and then went to Shem and Japheth and said, hey, dad's drunk, look, he's naked. 23. And Shem and Japheth took garment and laid it upon both their shoulders, and went backward and covered the nakedness of their father. And their faces were backward, and they saw not their father's nakedness. So they tried to avoid looking at him naked, but they covered him. Okay? 24. And Noah awoke from his wine, and knew what his younger son had done unto him. Right? So that would have been Ham. And he said, cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be unto his brethren. And he said, blessed be the Lord God of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. God shall enlarge Japheth, and he shall dwell in the tents of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. And Noah lived after the flood 60 years. And all the days of Noah were 950 years, and he died. Okay, so let's go back up to 25. And he said, "Cursed be Canaan," right? So Canaan, or the Canaanites, were cursed, right? A servant of servants shall he be unto his brethren. And he said, "Blessed be the Lord God." So he was cursed to be a servant of his brethren, which would have been Shem and Japheth. "And Canaan shall be his servant. God shall enlarge Japheth, and he shall dwell in the tents of Shem. And Canaan shall be his servant." Okay, so what we've established is that Canaan was the son that was cursed. Okay, so what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to establish all the sons of Ham, right? Because there were 4 sons of Ham. So we're going to read where it actually explains the 4 sons of Ham. Okay, so there were 3. So Ham had 4 sons, right? So Ham had 4 sons, and we are going to read in Genesis where it says that they had 4 sons, right? He had 4 sons, right? So it's Genesis 10, and we are reading 6. And sons of Ham were Cush and Mizraim and Put and Canaan, right? So Cush would be the Ethiopians and the Somalians or Eritreans. Mizraim would be the Egyptians, which are normally the Sudanese. Put are normally the North Africans, and the Canaanites are normally around South Africa, around that region, right? Southern Africa, okay? So the sons of Ham were actually Africans, right? They were all Africans, okay? So they were all dark-skinned nations of people, okay? So you have the Cushites, you have Mizraim, you have Put, and you have the Canaanites, okay? So there's two sorts of black people in Africa. You've got the Nilotic and you've got the Bantu. And the Bantu are normally the Israelites, and the Nilotic are normally the Hamite tribes. Okay, so Africa is divided into 2 sets of black people, right? So you got the Bantu and you've got the Nilotic people, right? That speak Nilotic languages, okay? And the real Africans are Nilotic, right? They're the original Africans, which would be the Hamites that I've just named, and the Bantu would be the Israelites. So those would be our people that actually they wandered into Africa after they were being persecuted, or just basically to run away, to flee persecution. They went throughout the whole of Africa. Okay, so that those will be the Israelites. Okay, right. So that's Ham. Now there's a clear difference between Hamites and Shemites, right? Because the Israelites would be Shemites, right? And the Shemites would be people like the Moabites, which are the Chinese, the Ammonites, which are the Japanese, modern day Japanese. You've got the Edomites, which are all Caucasians. You've got the Israelites, which are black people, right? And you've got the Ishmaelites, which were the Arabs. You know, I think Elam as well, which are the Indians. They are Shemites as well, right? They're all Shemite tribes, okay? So, well, what we're dealing with is mainly the Shemite tribe, which are Israelites, which would be our nation of people, which would be black people that have been through the curses and colonialism, okay, and slavery, right, including colonialism and slavery that were given the law, okay. So we are now going to explain that there's a clear difference between Hamites and Israelites, right, because the Most High created all nations for a purpose, right? And a lot of the times, the purpose is a means of getting Israel on track. Okay, so some nations were made specifically so that the Most High can show his power to the nation of Israel, okay, or to the earth, or to get our people who are Israelites to do what he wanted us to do. So he would use another nation of people to get us into position, right? Because the Lord has a strategic plan of how he wants his world organized, and everything is centered around Israelites, right? And that's why the Most High is only dealing right now, is only dealing with Israel. But in the kingdom to come, he will deal with the nations, right? So the Lord is not just dealing with Israel and then he just forget about everybody else. No, everybody else gets dealt with in the kingdom to come, right? For 1,000 years. And then after that, then everything kind of evens out a little bit. But Israel will still be the leading or the head nation that everybody has to answer to as a righteous nation of people. Okay, so let's now we're going to deal now with a little bit of history and a little bit of scriptures here and there to kind of prove that the Most High used the Canaanites as a means of Israel showing his power by their defeat, right? Because basically the land of Israel was occupied by the Canaanites, right? They were occupied by the Canaanites and other African Hamite tribes, right? And the Most High used the Israelites to drive them out of that land, right? So they were used as an instrument to show his power, okay? So let's now, first we're going to deal with the Egyptians, right? So first things first, we're going to deal with the Egyptians, and the Egyptians would be Mazrim, right? They're the Mazrims, right? Which is one of the Hamite tribes, okay? Not tribes, one of the Hamite nations, okay? So we're going to go to Exodus 10, and we're going to read from 1 to 2. So it's Exodus 10, and we are going to read from 1 to 2. So it's Exodus 10, and we'll read from 1 to 2. And the Lord said unto Moses, Go in unto Pharaoh, and for I have hardened his heart and the heart of his servants, that I might show these my signs before him, and that thou mayest tell in the ears of thy son and of thy son's son what things I have wrought in Egypt, and my signs which I have done among them, that ye may know that I am the Lord. Right, so the Most High used the Egyptians, right, which is the Hamites, so that he can show his might to the world, right? To the might, and especially to Israelites, right? Because the Most High was speaking to Moses so that he can take the Israelites out of Egypt, right? And Moses had to keep going to the king to plead to let our people go, right? Let my people go. That's what he would say, right? And the Most High hardened the heart of Pharaoh, right? So he basically used Pharaoh as a means of a whipping boy, right? To show his power to the Egyptians and to the Israelites, so that the Israelites can get on board with him, basically, right? So the Egyptians in that example were used so that the Most High can show his power. Okay, now I'm not going to go into all the curses and all that, because I think I did that in another video, right? So that's one example of where it clearly states that it was used, that the Egyptians were used so that he can show his power. Now, every single nation, it's really the same thing. You know, the Most High uses the nation that is in charge to show Israel his power. So he would use that nation as an instrument to show the Israelites, and especially the world, his power. Okay, right. So we're now going to go to Joshua. So we'll read Joshua, and we'll read 11:3. So we're reading Joshua, and we are reading 11:3. Okay, Joshua 11:3. And to the Canaanite on the east and on the west, and to the Amorite and the Hittite and the Perizzite and the Bushite in the mountains, and to the Havite on the Hermon in the land of Maspah. And they went out, and all their hosts with them, and much people as to the sand that is upon the sea, shew in multitude with horses and chariots, and very many. And when all these kings were met together, they came and pitched together at the waters of Marin to fight against Israel. And the Lord said unto Joshua, Be not afraid because of them, for tomorrow about this time will I deliver them up all slain before Israel. Thou shalt hoe that horses and burn their chariots with fire. So Joshua came and all the people of the war with him against them by the waters of Haram, and suddenly, and they fell upon them, and the Lord delivered them into the hand of Israel, who smote them and chased them unto Great Sidon and unto Mosrephath Maim and unto the valley of Maspah eastward, and they smote them until they left them none remaining. Okay, so the Most High gave us the power. So all this was happening when we were trying to reclaim our land. We were trying to claim our land, basically. The Most High gave us the land, and we were trying to get rid of the heathens that were on the land. So those were the nations that were on the land: the Canaanites, the Amorites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Jebusites. They were all Hamites, right? And the Havatites. They were all on the land, and the Most High basically wanted them off. Okay, so he gave Israel the power to get rid of them, to get them off the land, right? So he used those tribes, that I keep saying tribes, but he used those nations as a means of an instrument to show he used them as an instrument to show his power. Okay, so we are now going to go to Joshua 11:20. For it was of the Lord to harden their hearts, that they should come again against Israel in battle, that he might destroy them utterly, and that they might have no favor, but that he might destroy them as the Lord commanded Moses. Okay, so let's read it again. 20. For it was of the Lord to harden their hearts. So he hardened their hearts. That's those nations that were in the land, that they should come against Israel in battle, that he might destroy them utterly. So the Most High hardened their hearts specifically so that he can destroy them, and that they might have no favor, and that he might destroy them as the Lord commanded Moses. Okay, so let's read all the way down to 23. And at that time came Joshua and cut off the Anakims from the mountains, from Hebron, from Debir, from Anab, and from all the mountains of Judah, and from all the mountains of Israel. Joshua destroyed them utterly with their cities. There was none of Anakims left in the land of the children of Israel. Only in Gaza, in Gath, in Ashdod there remained. Right. So again, that is verified here. 23. So Joshua took the whole land according to all that the Lord said unto Moses, and Joshua gave it for an inheritance unto Israel according to their divisions by their tribes, and the land rested from war. Okay, so it's saying pretty much the same thing as we said before. So the Most High hardened their hearts, and then Israel took the land, right, via the leadership of Joshua. Okay, so let's now go to Judges, and we are going to confirm the same kind of thing in Judges, and we're going to read Judges 1, and we're going to read from 1 to 5. So it's Judges 1, and we're going to read from 1 to 5. Now, after the death of Joshua, so Joshua took over from Moses, because Moses didn't make it into the land, because the Most High, Moses was prevented from getting into the land. The Most High prevented Moses from getting into the land. Now, he showed Moses the land from afar, but he didn't allow him to enter the land because of something that Moses did that the Most High didn't like. Okay, so Joshua took over when Moses died. Okay, so the Most High the Most High had Moses die, and Joshua took over from him. Right, so we're reading Judges 1, and we read it from 1 to 5. Now, after the death of Joshua, it came to pass that the children of Israel asked the Lord, saying, Who shall go up for us against the Canaanites first to fight against them? And the Lord said, Judah shall go up. Behold, I have delivered the land into his hand. So the Canaanites presented more of a struggle to defeat. Right, the other nations, it seems like they were easier to be defeated, but the Canaanites were the real problem. Okay, 2. And the Lord said, Judah shall go up. Behold, I have delivered the land into his hand. And Judah said unto Simeon his brother, Come up with me into my lot, that we may fight against the Canaanites, and I likewise will go with thee into thy lot. So Simeon went with him. Right, so when it says Simeon and where it says Judah, etc., it just means the tribe. Okay, so there would have been men of Judah and men of Simeon. Okay, so it just means the tribes. So Simeon went went with him. 4. And Judah went up, and the Lord delivered the Canaanites and the Perizzites into their hand, right? So it confirms that they went into the hand of Judah, right? The Canaanites and the Perizzites. Perizzites. And they slew of them in Bazik 10,000 men, and they found Adoni Bezek in Bezek, and they fought against him, and they slew the Canaanites and the Perizzites. Okay, so again, the Most High uses the Hamite tribes. You know, we're dealing with the Canaanites really, but he uses the Hamite tribes especially so that as an instrument to show his power. Okay, so they were on the land, and the Most High got them off the land via Israel, right? Because Israel wouldn't have had the power unless the Most High was behind our people, our nation of people. Okay, so we are now going to go to the Apocrypha, and then we'll come back to Deuteronomy. So we're going to now confirm it again in First Esdras, and we're reading 8, and we're going to read from 69 to 72. And the nation of Israel, the princes and the priests and the Levites, have not put away from them the strange people of the land, nor the pollutions of the Gentiles, to wit of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Jebusites, the Moabites, Egyptians, and the Edomites. Okay, so when we were in the wilderness on our way to claim the land of Israel, right, the land that was allotted to us, let me put it like that, there were other nations that we met along the way, right? And therefore we would see those nations, and then we would take a liking to their women. But the Most High already warned us multiple times not to have anything to do with their women, right? Because it will basically take our hearts away from him, because then we'll start adopting their customs, and primarily we will start worshipping their gods. And the Most High didn't want that, okay? Plus, as you can imagine, he's just went through the struggle of getting us out of Egypt, you know, reclaiming back his people from Egypt, and then there only for them to start marrying into other nations along the way. You know, that really wasn't what the Most High wanted. He wanted Israel for himself, right? So that he can work out what he needs to work out with Israel without the distraction of any other nation, right? So let's continue. Now let's read 69 again. The nation of Israel, the princes and the priests and the Levites, have not put away from them the strange people of the land, nor the pollutions of the Gentiles, to wit. So strange people mean the people of the land were still there, right? Primarily the women, and the pollutions being their altars, in terms of their worshipping idolatry, other gods, okay? Because the Most High only showed himself to Israel, he didn't show himself to the other nations, so they were worshipping other gods, okay? To which are the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Jebusites, the Moabites, the Egyptians, and the Edomites. 70 for both they and their sons have married with their daughters, and the holy seed is mixed with the strange people of the land. And from the beginning of this matter, the rulers and the great men have been partakers of this iniquity. Okay, so the Most High was not very happy with our people taking the women of these strange people. Strange people just means the Gentiles, okay? From the beginning of this matter, the rulers and the great men have been partakers of this iniquity. So they were consistently doing it. They were seeing a woman that they liked, and they were taking her in marriage, okay? 71, and as soon as I had heard these things, I rent my clothes and the holy garment, and pulled off the hair off my head and beard, and sat me down sad and very heavy. 72, so all they that were then moved at the word of the Lord God of Israel assembled unto me, whilst I mourned for the iniquity, but I sat still, full of heaviness, until the evening sacrifice. So I suppose that was a prophet Ezra. You know, he was getting very frustrated because Israelites were still disobeying the Most High's commandments in terms of no interracial marriage, right? Okay, so let's now go to Deuteronomy 7, and we're going to explain this a little bit more. And this pretty much kind of summarizes the whole thing, really. So we're reading Deuteronomy 7, and we're going to read from 1 to 8. So we're reading Deuteronomy 7, read to 1 to 8. When the Lord thy God shall bring thee into the land, whither thou goest to possess it, and hearts cast out many nations before thee. The Hittites, so these were the nations again, the Hittites and the Gerasites and the Amorites, right? These were all the nations going on our way to reclaiming the land that the Most High promised to Abraham, okay? So it would have been, they would have been nations on their own land, but obviously we were going through their land to get to our land. So in so doing, we're meeting the other nations there, right? So the Gerasites and the Amorites and the Canaanites and the Perizzites and the Hittites and the Jebusites, 7 nations greater and mightier than thou, right? So those nations were primarily Hamites, okay? 2, and when the Lord thy God shall deliver them before thee, thou shalt smite them and utterly destroy them, and thou shalt make no covenant with them, nor show mercy unto them. So the Most High wanted us to wipe them out, okay? 3, neither shalt thou make marriages with them. So those were the nations that were actually on the land itself, okay? 3, neither shalt thou make marriages with them. Thy daughter thou shalt not give unto his son, nor his daughter shalt thou take unto thy son. So it's the same thing that the prophet Ezra was saying. So this is Moses speaking here in Deuteronomy, okay? For they will turn away thy son from following me, that they may serve other gods. So will the anger of the Lord be kindled against you and destroy thee suddenly. Because, again, the Most High did not want Israel to mix, because Israel was supposed to be set apart as a holy nation. Okay, let's read on, because it will say it as we read on. But thus shall ye deal with them. Ye shall destroy their altars, break down their images, cut down their groves, and burn their graven images with fire. So that was the pollutions. The pollutions was their worshipping of other gods. They were building altars and worshipping other gods. 6, for thou art a holy people unto the Lord thy God. The Lord thy God hath chosen thee to be a special people unto himself above all people that are upon the face of the earth. So Israel was chosen to be a special people, a holy people, a righteous people above all people upon the face of the earth. So the designated righteous people are the Israelites, okay, which would be our people, okay. 7, the Lord did not set his love upon you, nor choose you, because you were more in number than any people, for ye were the fewest of all people. So we were fewest in number of all people, right? 8, but because the Lord loved you, and because he would keep the oath which he had sworn unto your fathers, hath the Lord brought you out with a mighty hand, and redeemed you out of the house of bondman, and from the hand of Pharaoh king of Egypt. Okay, so the Lord is, so he's now pinpointing it. He's saying, but because the Lord loved you, because the Lord loved us, right? Because we were his wife unto him, okay? And because he would keep the oath which he had sworn unto his fathers. He swore an oath to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right? And the Lord brought you out with a mighty hand, and redeemed you out of the house of bondmen, from the hand of Pharaoh. So the Most High brought us out from the Egyptians, right? Again, he used Egyptians as an instrument to show his power, okay? From the hand of Pharaoh king of Egypt. Let's carry on. Know therefore the Lord thy God, he is God, the faithful God, which keepeth covenant and mercy with them that love him, and keep his commandments to 1,000 generations, right? And he repayeth them that hate him to their face, to destroy them. He will not be slack to him that hated him. He will repay him to his face. 11, thou shalt therefore keep the commandments and the statutes and the judgment which I command thee to this day, to do them. Wherefore it shall come to pass, if ye hearken to these judgments and keep and do them, that the Lord thy God shall keep unto thee the covenant and the mercy which he swore unto thy fathers. So here's where it gets a bit crunchy now. Now we get to understand what curses Israel is under, because the thing is that Israel disobeyed the covenants. We basically disobeyed the covenant that was given to Moses. Moses was the Levite priest, and he ministered the covenant between us and the Most High, right? And the Most High saw Israel as his wife. Okay, so all of his thoughts and everything that he wanted done here on earth went through Israel, goes through Israel, right? So the Most High, as you would with any wife, you have to tell your wife what you like and what you don't like, and obviously her job is to be your helpmeet. So it's for her to meet your needs in that respect. Okay, it's the same thing with the Most High. The Most High took us out of Egypt, married us, dusted us off, and gave us power. And the Most High told us exactly what he would like us to do, and he expected us to follow it, but we didn't. Okay, so because we didn't, curses came upon the nation of Israel. So so it's not the curses of Ham. We are not Hamites, we are Shemites, and we are Israelites under Shem. Okay, read Judges 3, and we'll read from 5 to 8. And the children of Israel dwelt among the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, and the Hevitites and the Jebusites, and they took their daughters to be their wives, and gave their daughters to their sons, and served their gods. And the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord, forget the Lord their God, and serve Balaam and the groves. Therefore the anger of the Lord was hot against Israel, and he sold them into the hand of Cushan Rishathaim, king of Mesopotamia. And the children of Israel served Cushan Rishathaim 8 years. Okay, so that was the beginning of the Most High getting very frustrated with his people. Okay, so let's now pinpoint exactly what the Bible says pertaining to the curses that came upon Israel, because again, we're not going through the curses of Ham. What we're going through is the curses that came upon the nation of Israel, which are in Deuteronomy 28. So we're not going to read all of it, but we're going to read some of the crucial bits. So we're going to read Deuteronomy 28, 15 to 16. But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee to this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee. Cursed shall thou be in the city, and cursed shall thou be in the field. Okay? Now it goes on to tell you the curses that came upon Israel, right? Let's do a few more. Cursed shall be the basket and thy store, right? So that's businesses. Cursed be the fruit of thy body and the fruit of thy land, the increase of thy kind and the flocks of thy sheep. Cursed shall thou be when thou comest in, and cursed thou shall be when thou goest out. Right. So Israel became cursed. So we can read the curses in Deuteronomy 28 from 15 to 68. So let's read some more. So let's go to 45, 48. Moreover, all these curses shall come upon thee, and shall pursue thee, and overtake thee, till thou be destroyed, because thou hearkenest not unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to keep his commandments and his statutes which he commanded thee. And they shall be upon thee for a sign and for a wonder, and upon thy seed forever, because thou service not the Lord thy God with joyfulness and with gladness of heart, and for the abundance of all things. Therefore shalt thou serve thy enemies, which the Lord shall send against thee in hunger and in thirst and in nakedness and in want of all things. And he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until he had destroyed thee. So these are the signs of the curses that came upon the nation of Israel, right? So let's see if we can go over some of them. So 46, and they shall be upon thee for a sign. So they will be upon thee for a sign and for a wonder, and upon the seed forever, right? So the forever is until Christ returns, okay? Because thou servist not the Lord thy God with joyfulness and with gladness of heart, for the abundance of all things. In other words, we disrespected the Most High. We were not a good wife to the Most High, right? 48, therefore shalt thou serve thy enemies. The enemies are your biblical enemies, which would be all the Gentile nations, which the Lord shall send against thee in anger and in thirst and in nakedness and in want of all things, and he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until he have destroyed thee. So the yoke of iron literally went on the neck of our brothers and sisters that went into the slavery, the transatlantic slavery, or any kind of slavery really. Right, and colonialism too, because the yokes went on our necks in colonialism. Right, let's read on for one for a few more verses. The Lord shall bring a nation against thee from afar, from the end of the earth, as swift as an eagle flieth, a nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand. So I think he's referring to Edom, right? So he's referring to the slavery that black people went through, okay, a few hundred years ago, right? A nation of fair countenance, which shall not regard the person of the old, nor show favour to the young. And he shall eat the fruit of thy cattle and the fruit of thy land, until thou be destroyed. Which also shall not leave thee either corn, wine, or oil, or increase of thy kine, or flocks of thy sheep, until he have destroyed thee. Okay, so let's read 52. And he shall besiege thee in all thy gates, and until thy high and fenced walls come down, wherein thou truest throughout all thy land. And he shall besiege thee in all thy gates throughout all thy land, which the Lord thy God had given thee. Right, so it's saying that the nations, that your biblical enemies, will take away everything that I've given to you. Right, they will besiege you, put you into slavery, put a yoke of iron around your neck, and you will not prosper. Okay, so that's a sign that came upon the nation of Israel. So let's now skip to 68. And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, by a way whereof I spake unto thee. Thou shalt see it no more again. There you shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. Buy you just means no one will buy you out of your slavery. No one will save you, in other words, okay? So the Egypt that it's talking about is not the actual country. It's talking about bondage, okay? Because in Exodus 20, it tells you that Egypt just means bondage, okay? So let's move up to 64. And the Lord shall scatter thee among all people, right? So we were scattered in all nations. That's why Christ gave the commandment to go and speak to all nations, right? And the Lord shall scatter thee among all people from one end of the earth even unto the other, and there thou shalt serve other gods. So we will, whereas before we had the opportunity to serve our God and be very powerful under our God, now the Lord is saying you will now serve other gods, and he will not have his power would not be there to protect us, okay? Which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone. Now the wood represents the wooden cross, which is fake Christianity. Not all Christianity is fake, right? But what is accepted as being Christianity today is full of half-truths to lies, right? In other words, they tell you half the truth and then they fill in the rest with lies, right? And if you're following the prosperity doctrine, you're really not even getting half-truths. You're getting probably about 10% truth, 5%, if you're lucky, 10%. And the rest of it is lies. You know, just the other day I was watching a prosperity minister, and he was preaching and he was misusing Isaiah 65, and he made it all about the money. Never mind the historical context of the way in which it was written. He didn't give you edification with the historical context. He just said it was all about the money. It was all supposed to be happening now. And then he continued to say that your prosperity is here now. You know, your favor is here. This is your year of favor. This is your year that you can claim it back from the devil by using something which really you should be given edification by giving the historical context of those verses. But anyhow, that is what it is getting at, is the falseness of Christianity. Okay, it doesn't mean because you attend the church it's all fake, you know, because there is truth that's being told in the churches, but it's just that half of it is lies, right? And stone represents the Kaaba stone. It represents Islam, basically, right? It represents, so there's two main religions in the world. So you have Christianity and you have Islam. So the Bible is saying that you would worship both religions, right? Both belief systems that are not biblical, right? It's simple as that, right? So those were the curses that came upon our people, right? So there is the curse upon Ham, but however, there are curses that came upon Israel too, right? So when people look at Africa and they see how bad it is in Africa, and they can clearly see that all the other nations are prospering. You go to even to India, you could see some sense of prosperity there. China definitely is a prosperous country. Japan is a very prosperous country. Obviously, Europe is very prosperous. Not all of Europe is as prosperous as you might think, but nevertheless, it is a prosperous continent. Parts of Asia is very prosperous, like the Koreans, very prosperous people. So you can see other nations who are very, very prosperous. But when you look at Africa as a continent, you can clearly see that there's not a lot of prosperity that is there. Now, it's not necessarily because of the curse of Ham, but it's also because of the curses that came upon the children of Israel. Okay, so we're going to go to Ecclesiasticus 33, and this pretty much summarizes what we are saying. So we're going to read Ecclesiastes, which is in the Apocrypha, 33, and we're going to read from 10 to 13. And all men are from the ground, and Adam was created of the earth. So we'll read it and then we'll discuss it afterwards. In much knowledge the Lord heart divided them and made their ways diverse. Some of them heart he blessed and exalted, and some of them heart he sanctified and set near himself. But some of them heart he cursed and brought low, and turned out of their places. As the clay is in the potter's hand, to fashion it at his pleasure, so man is in the hand of him that made him, to render to them is like it him best. So let's go over it. 10. And all men are from the ground, and Adam was created of the earth. So Adam was created of the earth, and all men were created from the ground. Okay, that's why in the beginning all human beings were the different shades of the ground, which goes from a light brown all the way to mid and dark brown, right? 11. And in much knowledge the Lord hath divided them and made their ways diverse. Right, so the Most High divided the nations and made their ways different to each other. So there's a difference between the nations. Okay, some of them heart he blessed and exalted. So some nations he exalted, like for instance the seeds of Shem have been exalted, right? And some of them heart he sanctified. Now he sanctified Israel. Okay, it just means set apart, right? Or approved. And he set near himself, right? But some of them heart he cursed, right? So some of the nations he set apart, right? It means some of the peoples he set apart, which would have been Israel, okay? And he set by himself. And some of them heart he cursed and brought low, right? So some of these nations he has cursed, which would be the Hamite, or the Canaanites. Let's say the Canaanites, okay? Because really, the curse of Ham is really the curse of the Canaanites, really, okay? And turned out of their places, as the clay is in the potter's hand, to fashion it at his pleasure, so man is in the hand of him that made him, to render to them as like it him best, right? So the Most High makes the decision. He made the nations, and he can use the nations however he shows fit to work out whatever he needs to work out for his will here on earth. Because at the end of the day, he is the creator. He makes the decisions, and therefore this is how he orders the earth. So some nations you can clearly see were made to serve others, right? Or you can clearly see that some nations were made in a downward position, in poverty, right? To be poor, right? Or some nations you can clearly see are, they're not, what's the word? I don't want to say prehistoric, but they're still kind of stuck. They're like a few hundred years behind, right? So there's certain tribes and certain forests in South America, certain tribes in Africa, etc., who are a few hundred years behind. They're not moving with the times, right? So there's certain peoples that were made to be just like that, and there's certain nations that he made that he sanctified, and certain nations that he made to progress. Okay, so it's all in the Most High's hands, right? And he definitely cursed the Canaanites, and the way how the Canaanites served Shem was them being wiped out, right? So they had all the land that they had, they were wiped out, and they had it taken from them. So in that respect, they had to serve Shem. And when Israel took over the land from the Canaanites, they were still Canaanites that were still based there, but obviously they were in a servitude position to Israel, right? So let's now go to one last scripture, and we're going to go back to the regular Bible, or the main Bible. Hebrews 3, reading from 1 to 6. Wherefore, holy brethren, partakers of the heavenly calling, consider the apostle and high priest of our profession, Jesus Christ, who was faithful to him that appointed him, as also Moses was faithful in all his house. For this man was counted worthy of more glory than Moses, insomuch as he who had builded the house had more honour than the house. For every house is builded by some man, but he that built all things is God. Right? And Moses verily was faithful in all his house as a servant for a testimony of those things which were to be spoken after. Right? So Moses pretty much followed what the Most High asked him to do. But Christ as a son over his own house, whose house we are. Right? So Christ superseded Moses. If we hold fast the confidence and the rejoicing of the hope firm unto the end. Right? So what that is saying is that Christ superseded Moses. So we're now not under the Mosaic law, but we're under Christ, right? So all the things in terms of nations being under nations, yes, that's going to continue. But in the kingdom, the Most High is going to put things in a better order, so to speak, right? There's going to be more order in the world. In terms of nations in general, will now have to convert to the way how the Lord will have them to be converted, whereby before he was only dealing with Israel, but in the kingdom to come, we will now as an Israelite nation will have to deal with the nations to get them on board, right? And then after 1,000 years, the devil will be released, and then we'll have a second judgment, where Most High sits on the judgment seat, and then he decides who's still going to be still here into immortality and who doesn't. Okay, so all that is going to be corrected in the future. So it doesn't matter who's poor now and who's at the bottom now, or who's been cursed now, because really all nations have been cursed in one way or another, right? Cain was cursed. Cain was cursed from the ground, and therefore he lost his skin complexion and came back as Esau, right? So every nation there's a curse that's on every single nation, right? But in the kingdom to come, all of that is going to be evened out, right? After 1,000 years, they're all going to be evened out, and then every nation, or nations in general, I should say, will now have a chance of immortality. Okay, so all of that is going to be evened out in the kingdom to come. Okay, so just to add this on, the Hamite nations, in particular, the Egyptians, which is Mazrim, they've obviously had a long time of rulership. The Egyptian empire was a very huge empire, and then you had the Babylonian Empire, which would have been the Cushites, which would have been the Ethiopians and the Somalians, Eritreans. They would have been the Babylonians. So they were obviously Cushites, right? So they had their time of rulership. So the way how these nations are now, these African nations are now, or Hamite nations are now, is not how they always were. Things change. Nations don't always rule forever, right? After the current rulership, which is Edom, then it's going to be Israel, right? And then the world is not going to have different nations ruling ever again. But however, in the past, it has changed hands. And the Hamite nations some of the Hamite nations that you see right now, they were not always as poor. In the past, they had very long and rich empires, and it just so happens that now they have become poor. But like the Bible says, the curse of Ham came on the Canaanites. Okay, so the Canaanites didn't have the same empire as the Cushites and the Mazarenes. Okay, brothers and sisters, I hope you were edified. Shalom.